Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like you to imagine arriving at work and knowing that before your shift is over, you're going to respond to either a fatal car crash, you're going to maybe perform CPR on a child, you might tell a family member that their loved one has died, or you might respond to someone who's attempted to take their own life. Now imagine you finish your shift and the expectation of you is to come back to work the next day and to act as if nothing has ever happened. For firefighters, police officers, and EMS providers, this isn't an imagination. This is reality. My name is Matthew Payne, and as a lieutenant and an EMS supervisor in the Hampton Division of Fire and Rescue, I have experienced these moments firsthand. I've watched incredibly skilled providers carry emotional burdens that nobody should see. Many of us wear body armor, helmets, gloves, turnout gear, to protect ourselves physically, but a lot of times we neglect our most important personal protective equipment, and that is our mental health. Today, I want to persuade you that because first responders experience repeated psychological trauma in significantly higher rates than the average citizen, agencies must treat mental health with the same urgency that we do with physical safety. The very first thing I want to do is stress that the mental health crisis among first responders is very real. Every emergency call leaves an impression. While some calls fade with time, others last a lifetime. In the year 2022, the Virginia Office of EMS offered a mental health survey to anyone in the state that had an EMS certification that ranges from EMTB to paramedic. And it found that 70% of EMS providers reported experiencing burnout, traumatic stress, PTSD symptoms, depression, suicidal thoughts or actions, or emotional harm related to the workplace violence that is seen during a period of 1 year. So think about that for a moment. That means that only 7 out of every 10 EMS providers in the state of Virginia have struggled with some form of significant mental health challenge. And peer-reviewed data proves this and supports these findings. Systemic reviews and multiple papers have found that ambulance personnel experience substantially higher rates of PTSD disorder, anxiety, and depression as opposed to the general population due to repeated exposure to traumatic events. So now we're going to review some of the data that was found in the 2022 Virginia Office of EMS Mental Health Survey. So there was a total of 475 participants. Approximately 83% were male and 12% were female. And the average age of the providers was around 58 years old. Certifications ranged 40% were EMT, 42% were paramedic. We had 11% which were intermediate and around 5% which were advanced EMT. The good majority of these participants were members of the fire department or the fire service at about 62%, and most of these were full-time paid employees. The years of experience based on our participants ranged, the good majority of people were greater than 30 years, but a close second was the 6 to 15 year age time frame. When people asked about their mental health, most of which said they were good or fair, or very good or good, at 42% being very good and 36% being good, with 0.7% being poor and 11% being fair. One important thing to note that providers were asked in a 30-day period, have they experienced any unhealthy days as far as mental health? And the average person said around 9 days. Most of which, based on our studies that they have here in the responses, they attributed a lot of this to being worried, tense, or anxious, or insufficient sleep or rest, which we typically see working 24-hour shifts in the emergency service. When asked if providers experience verbal abuse or physical assault, around 84% said that they experienced this during the period of their career. 55% said they had experienced this within the past 12 months. They were also asked, had they experienced physical assault? 63% said that they experienced physical assault during this period of their career. 20% said that they experienced physical assault within the past 12 months. But the studies that stick out the most to me When we look at our mental health outcomes, 59.3% of people said they've experienced burnout within their career, and 47% said that they've experienced burnout within the past 12 months. 57% said that they experienced traumatic stress during their career. 33% said they have experienced traumatic stress within the past 12 months. 41% of providers said that they experienced depression during their career. 30% said they've experienced depression within the past 12 months. 42% said they experienced PTSD throughout their career. 29% say they have experienced symptoms of PTSD within the past 12 months. When we look at the bottom sections, 66% of providers said that they have known someone who has attempted or died by suicide in this career during the time span of their career. 13% say they've experienced someone who has attempted or died by suicide in the past 12 months. And when asked if a provider knows someone who has had suicidal thoughts, 63% said they've known someone throughout their career that has had suicidal thoughts, and 24% they know someone that's had those thoughts within the past year. But unfortunately, recognizing the problem is only the first step. So you may be asking yourself, why don't more first responders ask for help? The answer lies with our culture. In emergency services, we have long had the values of toughness, resilience, and self-sacrifice. Those qualities help us perform under stressful situations. But sometimes they also create an environment where admitting emotional struggles looks like a sign of weakness. Many first responders worry about seeking counseling or mental health assistance could affect promotions, certifications, or even how coworkers perceive them. Others may simply believe that they should just be able to suck it up and handle it. That survey that we discussed earlier found that despite recognizing behavioral health concerns, many providers still reported barriers to seeking treatment, including the stigma that comes with it and concerns about confidentiality. So research shows that role identity disassociation plays the part in many paramedics and first responders. We have trouble because we develop identities that are centered around helping others while neglecting our own well-being. They often become more comfortable treating patients than we do treating our own selves. As someone who supervises EMS personnel, I've seen this firsthand. I've watched providers return to service immediately after dealing with heartbreaking calls because they didn't want to appear vulnerable. I've seen coworkers ask, "Are you good?" And then immediately having the response, "Yeah, I'm fine," even when we know that's not the truth. The truth is, strength isn't pretending you're okay. Strength is recognizing when you need help and having the courage to ask for it. Fortunately, there are some solutions that work. Mental health should be treated just like any physical injuries. If a firefighter breaks a leg, we don't expect them to ignore it and just go back to work, climb up a ladder. If an EMS provider suffers a stress injury, we shouldn't expect them to simply just get over it. Departments can make meaningful changes by investing in their people. Departments all over the country have started building peer support teams, confidential counseling services through EAP, critical incident stress management, annual behavioral health checkups, leadership training that encourages psychological safety, like psychological first aid, and the Emergency Assistance Program, EAP. It's an ongoing process that is supported by coworkers, supervisors, and mental health professionals. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned being an EMS supervisor is that sometimes the most important intervention isn't performed in the back of an ambulance. Sometimes it's simply sitting beside a coworker after a difficult call and asking, "How are you really doing?" Those conversations could save careers, but most importantly, they could save lives. In closing, today we've discussed 3 very important ideas. First, research clearly shows that first responders experience significantly higher rates of psychological trauma than the general population. Second, the stigma in the workplace often prevents providers from seeking the help that they need, and that's something that we have to get over. We're our own worst enemy. Finally, agencies can dramatically improve outcomes by investing in comprehensive behavioral health programs that normalize mental health wellness and provide confidential support. If we truly believe that first responders deserve the best personal protective equipment, mental health should become part of that equipment. We cannot continue to ask firefighters, police officers, and EMS personnel to carry the invisible wounds in silence. The next time you thank a first responder for their service, remember, supporting their mental health is one of the greatest things we can do to honor them. Not just ask, what's the worst call that you've been on? Because we get that every single day. Because protecting those people who protect us begins with protecting their minds as well as their bodies. Thank you.